All right, so behavioralism. Behavioralism has been a very important movement within political science from the 50s going towards the 60s. And it has left a long lasting impact on political science as a discipline. As a matter of fact, um, political science being a science, meaning to say a discipline very close to the physical sciences when it comes to the rigor of its method, we basically owe it to behavioralism. And basically, when we talk about behavioralism, it focuses on human political behavior as the main unit of analysis. Meaning to say, political scientists were engaged in behavioralist research studies focus on the political behavior of human beings. And not only individual human beings, but also even human beings in the aggregate, meaning to say, even the society itself, or even the nation state, behaves in a certain way. And that will still be included within the scope of behavioralism. Now, how did behavioralism come about, or the rise of behavioralism? Well, certainly it started with the dissatisfaction with the existing kind of political science before behavioralism, which was heavily reliant on legalistic political science, which heavily focuses on the legal structures that outlines constitutional structures, governmental structures, and so on and so forth. But when behavioralism came, political science as a field of study was enriched. Okay, and of course there were also the influence of the other disciplines, just like science itself. The methods of science being highly empirical has a huge impact on behavioralism. Other fields as well, such as let's say psychology or even sociology, right? Remember the French sociologist Auguste Comte was very influential in the rise of positivism, and later on, positivism became very influential in the rise of behavioralism. After the Second World War, political scientists were more eager to study political behavior, because as we all know, political behavior is very complicated. Individual political behavior, social political behavior, and as a matter of fact, even political behavior within the context of the nation state is very, very complicated. So we need something that is more adept to understand the nuances and complexities of these issues. Um, well, of course, another very important thing here is, the rise of logical positivism. Within in philosophy and in the social sciences, positivism became um, very important in the opening years of the 20th century, because they're trying to look for a more objective way of studying the phenomena of human societies and even philosophy itself. And so in a way they try to emulate the methods of the physical sciences, which is highly objective, focusing on what is empirical and what is analytical. Okay. If we look at the core characteristics of the behavioral movement, so as what I've said, it focuses on observing human behavior, because for behavioralism, human behavior is something that is observable. It's something that can be perceived through the senses. It could also be quantified. Quantified in the sense that it could be measured. Right? That's why most behavioralist researchers are basically more inclined to doing quantitative research than qualitative. But it does not necessarily mean that behavioralism cannot pursue qualitative research. It can. It can. But it focuses more on observable behavior, empirical data, uh, theoretical analysis, the use of theory when it comes to analyzing uh, the data. No, but nevertheless, um, behavioralists could opt for both quanti or quali. It's only that more behavioralists basically are more inclined to doing quantitative research because it's more precise, it's more exact. In a way, it has the analysis is neat. You're going to simply make use of statistical formulations to understand behavior patterns, to understand relationships among different variables and concepts. So that's the reason why more behavioralists often uh, do quantitative research, but it does not preclude them from doing qualitative research. They can. um, so yeah, systematic analysis is very important, as I've said, through the use of statistical treatments, dependent and independent variable, to the use of different concepts, etc. It's easy to manipulate variables through the use of statistical treatments, and so in a way, with a more precise degree, uh, we could explain or even predict political behavior. And it's value neutral. Value neutral in the sense that it's not really about what you think is right, but it's about what you see. It's about how you objectively, deduce phenomena, right? That's what's really important. It's not really about what you believe to be right or wrong, but it's about what you see, right? And it's heavily focused on theory building. These theories, basically, these are ideas that we assume to be correct, and we use to understand how the world functions, how the world, behaves. Um, Now, of course, that being said, we have to emphasize as well the role of the methods of science. Because as what we have said, behavioralists try to emulate the rigorous method of analysis of, of science, of pure sciences. And they heavily rely on positivist principles. That basically, for positivists, um, we can develop theories about the world, and what's really important is we continuously check whether these theories that we have developed are accurate or they reflect reality, right? That's very important for positivism and also for behavioralism. um, Now, very relevant to this discussion is the notion of falsifiability. Falsifiability is a notion that was uh, espoused by the philosopher of science named Karl Popper. He's a very prominent figure in the discipline of philosophy of science. Philosophy of science is a discipline that looks into the nature of science, tries to ask the question, what makes science science? And so there are many things, that the philosopher of science was able to conceptualize about it. But I think one of the most important, if not the most important, is the notion of falsifiability. So for Karl Popper, being scientific means it has to be falsifiable. Or the criterion of falsifiability is what separates real science from the so-called pseudo sciences or the fake sciences. So, for the notion of falsifiability, um, it underscores the importance of testable theories or hypotheses. Right? Um, there are theories, and theories basically are causal explanations that links uh, a cause to an effect, or to use the language of statistics, the independent variable and the dependent variable. So it tries to uh, provide causal explanations as to relationships among variables. Okay, that's what a theory is. And of course, with a theory, there comes a hypothesis. Because theorizing necessarily entails hypothesizing. You are hypothesizing the outcome of a particular thing. You are, in a way, trying to predict what will be the outcome, given that this set of, let's say, uh, conditions are met. Okay? And so falsifiability highlights the notion of testable theories and hypotheses. Testable meaning to say there must be an empirical evidence that shall affirm the accuracy of these theories or hypotheses. And as a matter of fact, it's not just merely about affirming or verifying, but the notion of falsifiability goes beyond verification. So kasi when you're trying to verify, you're looking into, let's say there's a theory and your goal is you want to verify the theory. The thing is, if that's your goal, then it could be a little bit biased because your goal is already, this theory is correct and you want to verify. Now for Karl Popper, he goes beyond mere verifiability and goes into falsifiability. The goal is not really to verify, but to falsify theories. I mean, you see, before Popper, there is a tendency to focus on verifying or confirming theories. Popper argued that repeatedly finding evidence that supports a theory does not necessarily make it true. Because a single observation that contradicts a theory, can disprove it. So it's not really about the quantum of evidence that has already been presented. So the point is, you must always look for avenues through which you can falsify. Because just one, let's say, observation that contradicts the theory could already falsify it, could already render it not accurate. Okay? It also promotes scientific progress. Of course, that's the reason why we call political science as a science, because there is a rigorous method behind it. It's not just simply about opinions or about ideas about certain things, but there is a rigorous process that you have to undergo in order for you to have a valid political analysis using behavioralism and the notion of falsifiability. And falsifiability allows us to develop theories, to develop more theories that are more accurate, that could be seen as something that reflects, the objective reality. But not only that, we could always, as we go on trying to falsify these theories, we could always update whether these theories are still working or not. But the thing is, there are, limitations to positivism, right? There are limitations to positivism, and the limitations of positivism could also be the same limitation that could be posed against behavioralism. For instance, human political behavior is very complicated. It's so nuanced that it is influenced by multiple factors that boxing it to just a simple causal mechanism between an independent variable and a dependent variable may be too reductionist, right? It may be too reductionist and may not be able to provide a more nuanced understanding of the political. And of course, when we talk about politics, it's really very difficult to conduct experiments, in politics, because we cannot just simply experiment on people. Unlike in the physical sciences, they could manipulate matter. But in political science and the other social sciences, I think that's really very difficult. And without experiments, it's really difficult to establish a strong connection between two variables. How sure are we that there is no intervening variable? Because in an experiment, researchers make sure that there are no intervening variables that interfere with the relationship between the two variables that we are talking about. But as I've said, in political analysis, it's really difficult to conduct experiments. So how can we ensure that there is no spurious connection between variables? And another thing that could be seen as a limitation is that human beings are, people that are fond of interpretation, right? So in a way, what we understand about the world is a matter of our own interpretation. And even scientists are not free from that. Meaning to say, even scientists commit that folly. That they could have some preconceptions that are consistently influencing their perspective, and that's very human. All human beings basically suffer that predicament, right? Suffer prejudices. So it's really very difficult to move away completely from interpretation. Just like what behavioralists are saying, they're value free. Value free, it's not really about what the researcher thinks, but it's about what the researcher sees. The question is, can we really move away from interpretations and values? I think that's the real problem. Because, behavioralists assume that theory and observation are, independent from each other. Theorizing is different from observation, so therefore, theory could be validated by observation. But the thing is, how could we say that our theories are completely value-free or completely interpretation-free, right? Actually, that's the thing. That's one thing that we have to think about continuously. Theory informs observation. What you see basically what you think about influences what you see. So how can we be completely sure that what we see is not influenced by what we think about? Right? I think this is the main issue when it comes to assuming that theorizing and observing are independent phenomena. They could be, but there could be doubts to it. There's always this potential for bias. And not only the potential for bias, but also the appreciation of facts. Right? The very act of classifying and categorizing observation involves theoretical assumptions already about what is relevant and about what is meaningful. Okay? So, yeah, that's just the limitation when it comes to behavioralism. Well, there are other alternatives like interpretivism or critical realism, or even constructivism. Some constructivists will believe that there are some observable patterns out there, but nevertheless we can never completely forgo with interpretation, right? Interpretivism, for instance, emphasizes the importance of understanding the subjective meanings and interpretations that individuals attach to an experience or a political activity or a political event, right? They argue that we should focus on how human beings socially or even politically construct reality, right? So those are the alternatives that we have to the behavioral approach. But what about the strengths of behavioralism? right? We all know that there is no single approach that we can say to be completely foolproof, that we can say to be completely, uh, objective or to be completely accurate. Otherwise, then, uh, we shouldn't have many theoretical approaches to political analysis, right? But we have many different theoretical approaches to political science. So therefore, there's really no, single, uh, they call this approach to doing political science. They always go with pros and cons. So we said that the negative side of behavioralism is that it could be too reductionist. It might not be able to understand complexities and nuances because it lacks the tools to understand interpretations and meanings, meaning construction, and so on. But there are strengths when it comes to behavioralism. Number one, it's more objective. I cannot say that it could be completely objective, but it's definitely more objective compared to the other approaches to political science. Um, it has methodological rigor, meaning to say there's a precise way of doing political analysis, right? There's a precise way on how to understand data. There's a precise way on how to falsify theories and hypotheses. So it does not, just merely rely on whims and opinions and prejudices. It tries its very best, exerts effort to be as objective as it can, employing a rigorous method. A method is supposed to be objective, right? When it comes to dealing with political issues or political phenomenon that needs to be studied. Um, Another strength that I can say is that it focuses on something that is observable, which is political behavior. I mean, there may be a lot of things in your mind that cannot be subject to direct observation, but you know, how you behave politically. I mean, who are the people that you vote for? How do you participate in what's happening in the society? I mean, these things could be perceived empirically. And so, therefore, our assumptions and our theories, hypotheses, and analyses and conclusions are backed up by empirical data, by something that we can observe, something that could verify and falsify our assumptions. And behavioralism has influenced political science since the 50s and the 60s, and even up to now. Even if we have a lot of approaches to doing political science, behavioralism has left its mark, I think, permanently to political science. I mean, when we do research, why is it that we're focused on developing theories that came from behavioralism? Why is it that we want verifiable data, right? Why is it that we're always fixated with empirical data in political science? We owe that to behavioralism, right? And so, despite the fact that behavioralism may have some setbacks, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was not able to provide a strong foundation to political analysis, because it does. Our fixation with theories, our fixation with empirical data, we all owe it to behavioralism. And so, to wrap up our discussion on behavioralism, yes, it is heavily influenced by positivism. These positivists move away from intellectual endeavors that involves metaphysics, involves normative theorizing, that involves values. Because for the positivists, we can never agree on these things, and so it should not be an important concern for us. And behavioralism has in a way inherited that. It's supposed to be heavily objective, supposed to be scientific, supposed to be reliant on empirical data and analysis to provide a conclusion that is reflective of the political realities of our daily life.